Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are about to begin.
Industrial leaders and special guests, welcome back to the second day of the Industrial Transformation event. Please, once again, welcome to the stage LNS Research co-founder and commercial leader, Mehul Shah.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? That's awesome. Welcome to the second day of LNS Research Industrial Transformation Executive event. Did everybody have a great day one of the event? That's awesome. I was in some of the roundtables. The discussions were simply amazing. I said it yesterday, the discussions between the slides are the best discussions. So we're going to continue on the core theme of productivity growth today. You saw this slide yesterday, and when we looked at the productivity pathfinders, there was one key thing that was really striking to me. Most of the 30 companies that we talked about were growing, but those 30 companies were growing from a profitable perspective. And the only way you can drive profitability is through productivity. We talked about these 4 key aspects that really drive productivity and profitability for industrial organizations. Today, we're going to double-click on one of them, which is how do you build radical trust? How do you build transparency, not just within the 4 walls of our plants, but across the 4 walls, across the value chain? Now, we see this challenge all the time, right? Whether it's IT and OT, yes, they're working together in the same teams, but the trust factor is questionable. Whether it's frontline workforce and the leadership. And in some cases, I've heard one plant manager not sharing information with other plant managers. It's very common across our industry. One of the key differentiators of these Pathfinders is they create this trust. It's on the core culture, the core operating model of the organization. We have an amazing, amazing keynote speakers today to kind of talk about how they are driving that trust and transparency across their organization. Now, one of the things I talked about yesterday was LNS Research vision in the marketplace is to empower and educate at different levels of the organization. That is a big vision, and I don't believe one organization can do it. I love this quote, alone we can do little, together we can do a lot. It applies to manufacturing, it applies to our research business as well. So today I'm excited to announce 3 key partnerships that LNS has been working for a long time, and you'll see a lot coming out over the next year, 2 years, and future years with these 3 partners. Number 1, women in manufacturing. We have we have Alice and Magnus, the CEO here, an amazing, amazing organization focused on inspiring women to join manufacturing. We are doing some joint research projects, we're doing some joint events, and we're looking forward to be working with Allison and her team at Women in Manufacturing. American Society of Quality, the premier quality organization in Americas, and they're driving partnership across the world. Our research in quality is impeccable, and we are going to be working with ASQ, the CEO Sid, who was on the executive panel yesterday, to make sure that we are helping organizations drive a culture of quality across the world. And Sesame, an organization really focused on democratizing smart manufacturing. We had John Dyke and Jonathan Weiss. Jonathan Weiss is here today. We'll be working together on the key challenge of data and architecture. That's going to be critical for the success of all of our organizations. Now, we want to make sure that all of these things that we talk about over yesterday and today, we kind of continue over the next year. So I'm, again, finally excited to announce that we'll be doing another event in May, really focused on this topic of productivity pathfinders. It's going to be in Minneapolis, and the idea is to look at those top 30 companies, get their executives to talk about why they are driving that much productivity. I often hear this challenge, right? That, hey, we are here at the event. We are sold on this idea. We are sold on this idea that change is important. But how do I go in and convince my leadership? How do I go in and convince my head of global operations or CEO to kind of make sure that they're driving this investment? This event is about getting all of you, getting your leaders there, and having them benchmark with their peers so that you can get the support to go faster in this journey. Now, if you liked yesterday, today is going to be even better. We have 5 executive roundtables on many different topics on the decisions that we all are making. Some great speakers. That's going to be around 10 to 12, if that's the roundtable timing. And then we'll basically have an amazing panel on one of the key themes of this event, which is servant leadership. I want to thank the sponsors again. Without the sponsors, this is not possible. You know, if you had not got a chance to speak to the sponsors yesterday, please take some time, understand the art of possible, understand how they are helping their customers drive productivity. Can we please give all the speakers and sponsors a huge round of applause? And with that, I'm excited to announce our keynote lineup for today. We'll hear from Lynn Kubinski from BMS, a global biopharmaceutical company which is very much laser-focused on patients. She is a transformative leader. She has led many different transformations, and her focus is around creating diversified experiences to solve complex challenges that drives business results. We'll also hear from Costy, the president of Digital Industries and managing director of Digital Industries software business. He leads the go-to-market and is focused on driving real business value, speed, and agility for his clients. And finally, we have Niels Andersen. You know, there's a common saying, you know, we might have heard, right? I grew up in a farm. Niels Andersen grew up in a manufacturing plant. He is on the board of a manufacturing organization. He has 30 illustrious years of experience working in many different technologies and understand the combination. How do you make people, process, and technology work together? Please join me in welcoming Niels Andersen.
Thank you so much, Mehul. And just to clarify, when he said I grew up in a manufacturing plant, I'm not a robot. I wasn't assembled there. I just love manufacturing. But I must say that I feel really blessed to be here, and I feel really blessed with all the conversations we had, all the manufacturers, all the tech companies, from the giants to the innovative newcomers, and all the energy that is here that is focused on making manufacturing better. So I'm going to talk about radical trust and transparency across multiple elements. And you've probably seen this slide, I think it's the 3rd time now, but one of my philosophies is that from each one of these events, you're only going to remember 3 things, and one of them is probably going to be lunch. And the other one, I want you to be in this slide here. I'm going to talk about radical trust and transparency actually in 3 different aspects. What's the make things different? How do you go in and get radical trust and transparency in order to have unique products and unique production processes? The radical trust and transparency across a value chain, across a supply chain, across a demand chain. And then finally, the radical trust and transparency inside an organization. You see quality on here as well, embedded, the delivered quality. And I just want to mention it because one of the things we've seen in our research that is absolutely critical is that if you can focus on delivered quality, the quality delivered to the customer, not just the procedural enforcement of quality, and the increase in process capability, reduction of variance, it is a critical enabler of everything else. So what I'm going to share with you today is based on our research around industrial operations strategy, and it's directly related to what you heard from Matt yesterday on the Industrial Productivity Index and also the Pathfinders. I want to start off with the notion of make things different and unique products. And we're going to have Siemens up here later. They have their Team Center PLM. And I think it's important to understand that the products that we make are also created. And we look at the product lifecycle chain and the product lifecycle management. I'm sure the people who are in the PLM world would say that this is a very simplified view of the world. But it's basically ideation, design, develop, make, use, maintain, and recycle. And one of the struggles we have today is that the information, the tools, how we work together on the ideation, design, and development side is quite well integrated. But we are getting decreasing visibility into the make, the use, and maintain, and recycle step. Do we really design for manufacturing? If manufacturing identifies an issue with the product you're making, are we getting that back into the design as well? How often do we know about how the product is used? Do we know how it's maintained? And finally, what is the end of life cycle? I want to take 3 examples from the automotive industry. And it's a little bit by chance it's all automotive, but it's also tied together. And they've been revolutionary in the world of manufacturing. The first story is about Ford, where they created the Model T in 1908. And not only did they create a unique product, it was affordable, it was easy to use, you had a new transmission, you even had a tooltip kit to come with it. But also, they made it in a different way. They went and invented the assembly line. They went in and they combined the engine block and the crankcase to a single cast. They went in and they started using light alloys like vanadium, and they really changed the way that manufacturing works today. The second one is Toyota. And Toyota in post-World War II era, in 1948 to 1975, they went in and they created Toyota production system, and they really thought about manufacturing in a very, very different way. They invented the concept of just-in-time. They took the concept of continuous flows into discrete manufacturing, making the right product at the right time for the right customer in the right way, completely transferring what is going on. They also went in and thought different about how you bring attention to manufacturing processes. They created Jidoka, or automation with human touch, where they went in and they had their best engineers hand-build machines, like get the knowledge that they had about how to build manufacturing into the machines, did continuous improvement. And they even did things that seemed to be strange back then. Whenever you had a problem, you would stop the whole production line so you get the right focus and right attention to the problem to be solved. And based on that, they created basically what is lean manufacturing today, and it's become the standard for many manufacturing companies. And the last one is Tesla. And while there can be a lot of debates about the owner and the leadership of Tesla, it is fascinating what they have done, both from their first principles within manufacturing, the 5 manufacturing principles, where they're really elevating themselves and saying, instead of just implementing everything we asked to do, let's make sure we truly question the requirements. Do we have to do this? When we go in and look at the products, delete the parts and processes that we don't need, then simplify and optimize, then accelerate the cycle time, and finally automate. Don't try to go in and automate things that you don't know what you have to do. The worst thing you could do is to do a perfect solution to something you never had to do in the first place. But that's not the first thing they did, the only thing they did. They also provided connectivity to their product. I think that they are the first major auto manufacturer that truly understands how the product is used. They have connectivity, they know how the driver is using it, they know the maintenance records, they can do over-the-air updates, which is truly unique. And our research showed that this is critical. 42% of the leaders, as we classify leaders, saying that unique manufacturing processes, technology innovation is critical to their success. And 58% more of the leaders than the followers says that agility and new product introduction is what is driving their success as well. So now let's look at not just the design element of this, but also the manufacturing value chain. And for those of you who know the SCORE model, you've probably seen this: source, make, deliver. But the challenge we quite often have in manufacturing is that we look at source, make, deliver within the walls of our manufacturing plant or within our company. And most manufacturing industries have a supply chain that goes way beyond that. You have upstream and downstream processes. But the issue we have is that in most processes, we have limited visibility into what's going on. A lot of companies don't know that there is a true need for their product until they get an order. A lot of companies don't communicate to their suppliers that they need more of the material until they place an order. And yes, we have a lot of tools out there that makes things better and easier with forecasting and AI modeling and so on. But it's really difficult to do forecasting on SKU level. And in reality, All manufacturing has to happen at SKU level. We can't make a generic product. One of my favorite quotes is from Lord Kelvin, and I keep reminding me about this every day. If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And I think we have to ask ourselves, how do we measure productivity? And how can we increase visibility into what we're doing? So you heard from Matt yesterday in the productivity index and the Pathfinders, and we talk about productivity. And productivity is actually a lot more complicated to measure than what it looks like at the first time. It sounds very easy. It's basically output divided by input. How much output am I generating based on the inputs I put in? And the inputs here is raw material, labor, energy, even the use of equipment, and so on. The problem is that the way we measure this is in money, but the way that we express it is the relationship between outputs and inputs. And what we have done is we created a normalization in the data across industries to look at the input factor for this industry, and we adjust for the productivity index and the consumer price indexes going into it and out of it in order to actually measure the productivity. And this given us ability to see productivity in total. And the results are quite shocking, quite surprising. And we've seen a major reduction in productivity, and I must say that part of this is driven by the energy sector. It's very much one industry that is dominating this, but even other industries are struggling with productivity. And we believe, based on our research and our surveying, that part of this is because of lack of trust and transparency. Part of this is how we go in and we do incremental changes. They're great, but at some point in time, we have to do a step change. We have to introduce a new product. We have to introduce the new production processes. We see a lot of what we call digital insanity. It's like, yeah, let's do digital transformation and something magic is going to happen. Doing the same thing digitally and expecting different outcomes. And of course, we also have seen demand shift from, these are all US listed companies, so they tend to be in the Western world, US and Europe. And we see a lot of that demand shift being going to companies that are not listed in the US. So when we talk about this external trust and transparency across the supply chain, we went in and we did surveying on this, and we identified what are the differences between the leaders and the followers in this space. And we then looked at how do companies interact with suppliers and with customers. And one element we found was that you have to give trust and transparency to get trust and transparency. And I've seen many manufacturing supply chains, and we tend to hold on to information and not share it. But the reality is that if the goal for the supply chain is to fulfill the need of the end customer, it's likely that you're better off if you're collaborating. So we saw that the leaders in this field were 106% more likely to show their cost information to their customers than the followers were. I know that can be very, very scary to do. But we also saw the same thing from their suppliers again. They were 74% more likely to receive cost information. We have this concept of a collaborating supply chain will beat a competing supply chain every day. Think about that. Quite often supply chains are behaving like their competitors. Imagine you had a relay and the person was handing off and they were like fighting with each other because they think that each one's going to win the race. But you have to work together in order to achieve it. So what we've seen here is the willingness to, when you have cost sharing information, like if cost goes up, you're allowed to increase your cost. If cost goes down, you're allowed to decrease your cost because you must make money in every single part of the supply chain. And on the supplier side, we also saw an increase, a very high degree of collaboration on product development. Actually, a lot of the relationships with the suppliers were more strategic in nature in the form that they created longer-term product development than they were on the customer side. We also looked at the accumulation of trust, the way they work with these companies. And actually on the customer side, it was more about understanding the day-to-day needs and fulfilling that. But then on the supplier side, it was about building the relationships that allowed them to create a stronger supply chain. And then finally, this is not like kumbaya where they're all sitting and holding hands and being happy together. We see that this is very much a managed process. We saw that the leaders are much more likely to have contracts in place regulating the relationship. So I want to talk about external exploration, and I want to both thank you and congratulate you for being here. Because one of the things we've seen, and I've seen in all of these discussions, is how people share information and the effects of that. I had a discussion yesterday with a gentleman from a life sciences company. He said, I spoke to someone in a sugar industry, and it's amazing what we actually have in common. And I think that is true. So we have identified that there's a need for us to collaborate. And we identified all the possible sources of that collaboration. And when we do our research, we've seen that some of the most trusted partners that you manufacturers have are actually the system integrators, both the local system integrators and the large IT system integrators. Then it's companies like us, advisors and industry analysts. Then you have all these software automation tech vendors that are here today that you can collaborate with. And then you have the engineering and procurement firms. And what is special about this is that they have people that have invested in understanding your industry and can help you. And we think this is critical. So when we look at this trust and transparency across the two axes of the product development lifecycle and the supply chain lifecycle, we really have this thing I would call the envelope of control. And if anyone ever read the Serenity Prayer, we have the courage to change the things we can, understanding what can I actually influence. But there are some challenges associated with that. And you saw this from James Wells yesterday in his panel keynote. You know, change management is not easy. And one of the things we quite often see is that these organizations go in and they build centralized teams that understand all the problems, they evaluate all the solutions, and they come up with, this is the perfect way to go do it. And then they communicate that to their team, and their team has not been part of this journey, and therefore their team has a hard way to accept it. I'm not going to dive into the details of that, but having the ability to communicate to your teams, get them part of this process, the change management process, and give them time to absorb the changes you want is absolutely critical. The other thing I want to touch on, and we spoke about this in one of the roundtables yesterday, is this notion of Conway's Law. If any of you are in the software industry, you may have heard about it. But it basically it's not really a law of physics, but it's a law that is one of the most persistent laws within organizations within the software world. And I believe that this also happens in the manufacturing world. The law says that organizations that design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of their communication structures of these organizations. And basically what they observe is that if you go in and you build your organization first and say, this is what my org chart looks like, you're going to get an outcome that looks exactly like your org chart. So you have to start the other way around. If you want to have something that says that we have strong collaboration across all these things, it doesn't mean that you can't have the reporting structure you have today, but you have to put in communication channels that allow the people that are doing the ideation to understand how the product is used and maintained. You have to have the make people talk to the source people so that you can actually buy the raw materials that makes it easier to manufacture. You have to go in and have the source people talk to the ideation people because maybe there is something that your supplier can do that can create a better product. And then when you do this, you have to communicate it, and we've seen this in some of the sessions before, but it's absolutely critical. You build a strategy, in operations strategy, you map your operations strategy to your enterprise strategy. You go in and you explain to your organization and work with the organization to get them to understand what you actually need to deliver. You create clear objectives, you break it down into something that is actionable for the individual. Throughout my career, I would say 99% of all the people I've ever worked with wants to do a good job. I see a lot of people who struggle with doing a good job because they don't know what it is. No one has communicated to them what a good job is. And by doing something like this, we can actually help them be successful. So looking at that from internal perspective, and I got a lot of numbers on here, and I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but this is from our survey materials. What we identified for the internal trust and transparency is that leadership is absolutely critical. Having one industrial operations leader across, at least within a business unit, that can tie this together. If you go in and do it by geography or by plant, it makes it very difficult to tie it together. And have that person in power reporting to the CEO. We see that culture is absolutely critical. Create a strategy, communicate the strategy, have a compelling vision, have something that people can believe in, something that they can rally around. Make sure that you can go in and you do the change management. Engage people, get some consensus decisions, and demonstrate some empathy to show that they are part of a long-term journey. And then finally, the concept of strategy. Go in and have one unified strategy on the operations side that is tightly aligned with the enterprise strategy, and make sure that that is fully understood, and make sure you update it so it doesn't become just sitting in a folder. Then there's also the element of technology. And I know I'm covering a lot of things here, but there are many different ways. The way you think about things, the way you organize things, the way you work with your people, the way you work across your supply chain is absolutely critical. But we also believe that technology has a significant enabler in order to achieve this. And we have gone in and for many years, we created these reference architectures. We started off with the industrial Internet of Things reference architecture, and then we built multiple versions of it. And we see that there are some commonality that is going again and again. We see a strong focus on virtual operations centers in order to solve the problem of the scarce resources you have that have access to limited information. We see the empowerment of the connected frontline workforce, of how you can actually give the information to the person who can do something about it at the right time. We see all these applications in this space that have a need to share information. And we see the struggles in this space as well, with all the tech vendors pushing their own platforms in order for the manufacturers to absorb it. And it's very difficult for the manufacturers to actually integrate it. So we see the increased need of having standard interfaces built on these platforms, and then tied all together from the business systems all the way down to the plant assets. So my challenge to you is increase trust, transparency, and collaboration. Think different. Imagine the possibilities about what you can do. Don't just think about all the obstacles. What can you actually achieve? If you said that it is possible to do this, what needs to be done to achieve it? Drive productivity. If you only think about operations as a cost center, you're going to optimize and optimize. It's going to be better for a while, and then you're going to hit a wall because you're not going to have the next generation of products coming out. And then remove the obstacles. Enable efficient communication. I was challenged yesterday. I say, what if we created a world where there was only 1 degree of separation between everyone in the organization? You can work together, you can share information, you have agents that can help you. And that's what I'm challenging you to do. So thank you so much for your time.
Please welcome to the stage Siemens President, Digital Industries US and Managing Director, America's Digital Industry Software, Del Costy.
Before trust and transparency, boy, that's a long title. That's a mouthful. I feel sorry for anyone who has to talk about that. So I'm going to start with our why. Our why is right at the top. We create technology to transform the everyday for everyone. And there's a couple of words that stand out to me. We and for everyone. So it's a mission-driven set of words that everyone in our company has bought into. And you can see the principles underneath. It's not relevant to create technology with no purpose. It absolutely needs a purpose. I heard yesterday folks talk about the idea of growth mindset. It's critical to lead an organization that believes that their voice can be heard and they can contribute to what their cause is. Empowered people, that's absolutely a must. And finally, customer impact. Everything we do is focused on customer impact. And before I'm done, I think you're going to see, I love the idea of servant leadership. It's something we all live and breathe in our organization. But we need to serve our customers. We need to serve our people. And the fact is, we need to serve society as well. And so for us, we take sustainability very seriously as a company. So all these things are the motivating factor for each of us that get up to do our job every day. So that's our why. I'm going to talk a little bit about my why. Anyone from Detroit? I see some hands. You guys recognize this mural? All right. So we have a wonderful Institute of Arts in the center of Detroit. And so if you grew up in Detroit, I guarantee you took a field trip to visit this at some point. Well, I happened to be in elementary school. And imagine being 7, 8 years old, walking into a building, and the whole foyer is murals on the wall. To give you an idea, this is one panel. It represents about 43,000 square feet of space inside the DIA. Now, when you're looking up at something like this as a child, it sparks your it sparks a lot of questions. You want to know, what is this about? And so obviously that becomes a set of you quest for information on why. What was this mural about? And that's kind of got me on my path to learn about the history of Detroit. And for those that don't know, Detroit at one point was the industrial epicenter of the world. There's a great book, Freedom's Forge. If you haven't read it, I would urge you to. As manufacturers, I think everyone should read that book. But it talked about the role Detroit played in World War II. And this artist went and spent months going to manufacturing facility after manufacturing facility in the greater Detroit area. And what was a stark reality for him was this interface between human and machine. And that's what you could see in this image and all the images that are on the panels in the DIA. And so it got me very curious, and I learned a lot about the history of Detroit simply by making this field trip. The impact manufacturing had on our community, how human innovation drove the development of a city, and how when we took our eye off the ball as a country, it destroyed a city. That's my why. We have an opportunity now in the United States, globally, to change lives for people, to make things better, and to harness innovation of all of our people. So we're getting inundated, and this is one heck of a leadership challenge. I've heard the conversations. I'm really glad I got to spend the time here yesterday listening to all of you. We're getting inundated with a lot of technology. And Niels has talked about it. There's a ton of capability out there. It's impacting every industry. And the fact is, you already have commitments. You already are building things. You're already committed to build things at a specific time and a specific cost. To make these changes, to get to that art of the possible isn't easy. But it's impacting every industry that we're dealing in. And this image sums it up to me. This is what we heard a lot about yesterday. Matt talked about it. If you look at what's happening right now in the workforce, since 2019, we had a significant exodus out of the manufacturing workforce. And now we've got a situation where we have people that don't have a lot of seniority. We went from 20, and this is LNS's data, 20 years of experience down to under 3. We went from having 9 years of experience doing a particular function to under 9 months, 7 years to under 9 months. This is significant change. How are we going to harness that knowledge that sits in the employee that spent 30 years in the factory and transfer it to a new employee that's been there for a matter of months? And we also heard the statistics on incidents on the shop floor. That should be a concern for all of us. Anyone that has a job running a large organization, you live and breathe with the health of your employees, and no one wants the phone call that you had an employee that didn't go home at the end of their shift. So this is something we all have to take seriously. And I will tell you, it's become the mission for us at Siemens, and we talk about this concept of real and digital. We've been on this journey for 20 plus years. And I could have spent a lot of time talking to you about all the great capabilities in here, but to me, you can find that out at another time. I'm not going to spend my time on that. I love the theme of this conference, and I want to focus on the why. Why did Siemens get on this journey? And it's a fair question, but I will tell you it wasn't simply a business model choice. It was out of necessity, just like a lot of you have to deal with. Since this time, over this 20-year journey, we've spent over $15 billion in counting on technologies that are going to help move this company forward. And it happens to be a business model to help all of our customers move forward as well. So I'm going to actually tell you a story about, I would call it our premier plant in the digital industries business. It's in Hamburg, Germany. So Siemens makes PLC. I know you all know what that is. And it was the premium PLC on the market. So back in the late 90s in Germany, in Europe, there was I think one of the biggest visionaries that I've ever come across in my career. His name is Anton Huber. He ran that digital factory division. And he saw some things that really concerned him. The market was getting flooded with very low-cost PLCs from China. And again, he had the best, most efficient factory in the world at the time, but he was building a premium product. And the factory was set up to build a premium product. So he had a choice to make. I have 1,200 employees in Hamburg, Germany. I've had them there for decades. It's an older facility. What am I going to do? Do I have to make the hard decision to shutter this plant and build in China so I can compete on cost? He said, no, I'm not going to do that. Happened to be at a conference like this, saw some 3D things spinning on a screen, and he said, wow, imagine if I had a 3D replica of my facility and I could make better decisions on how this operation needs to run. And that started him on this journey in the early 2000s. And so he set a challenge to the team. He said, we right now have a PLC come off the line every 12.5 seconds. That's not going to cut it. We right now are 20% automated. We're going to be 90% automated. And we're going to get 10x improvement in how we produce PLCs. And he made that challenge to the leadership team. Word got out, the employees got very concerned. Hey, if we go from 20% automation to 90, that means the bulk of us are going to lose our job. So what did Anton do? He said, no one's losing their job, and we're not going to add 1 square foot of space on the shop floor. That's the challenge. So a team got together and rethought everything. And this was truly a team activity. So what did they do? They started questioning everything that was being done. And they embraced digital. So that started the journey of getting on a digital twin map of the facility. And so it was listing technology, enlisting minds, and enlisting the workers on the floor. How can we do this differently? A couple things happened. Eliminated the warehouse. Elevated the shop floor production to a mezzanine level. Had all the warehouse product underneath that. Eliminated the waste of movement. Smart conveyance. All the robots had cameras installed. Got to the point where they said, if you're going to supply us product, because they work with over 40 machine vendors to help modernize the way the machines would work, if you're going to provide us product, you're going to do it with a digital twin. Otherwise, you're not going to be a vendor to us. So you give us the digital data. Why? Because now everything could be virtually commissioned before it was put on the shop floor. Got to the point where Anton knew exactly what this facility was going to do, and the results were staggering. The team didn't achieve 10x. The team actually achieved 13x. They went from 80,000 products released a month to over 1 million. That was the productivity increase. And by the way, PPM dropped from 100 PPM to 10. That's what this team was able to do. Fascinating story. It's our why. And so this was an amazing set of activities. I will tell you a side story that I want to be careful on time because I could talk about this all day. They actually got a group of interns who happened to just see the movie Transformers. And they're like, why can't we have the machines act like Transformers and manipulate themselves to modify production? Well, they started working on that concept, realized it couldn't work, but what they could do is have the product take on its own identity and DNA, and the product could start communicating to the line and saying, well, I need to consume runtime from this machine and then this machine. We ended up increasing the number of variants that we made at this plant to over 1,300 different products made a year. And I told you about the quality improvement. All that done with the power of leveraging the whole team. And by the way, everyone, whether you were maintenance service, whether you were cleaning the facility, whether you were an executive, all had KPIs and dashboards throughout the facility. I would offer you the invite if you happen to go to Hanover. There's folks in the room that have taken the tour. More than welcome, give me a call, we'll set it up, and you can go visit Hamburg and Erlangen to see what we're talking about here. By the way, the team felt very socially responsible as well. So the team determined we're going to do this more sustainable than ever before. Actually, when incorporating the supply chain, developed a platform called Sea Green, which gave them full visibility to the supply chain, drove tremendous improvement. By 2026, they expected to be carbon neutral. They exceeded that. They beat that. And this facility was named Sustainability Facility of the Year, and it was a lighthouse by the World Economic Forum. So really, really amazing accomplishment at this facility. And by the way, safety incidents continue to decline at this facility, no fatalities. So that's our why. And clearly, we're on this mission of sustainability. This was our lighthouse, and so this spread like wildfire throughout the organization. You can see some of the statistics. We take it very seriously. We'll always take it very seriously. And this is something that, the other thing I didn't talk about is that got us on this journey of digital twin. And you'll hear a lot about digital twin. I would tell you do your research, because we do view digital twin quite differently than a lot do. A digital twin for us is comprehensive. It's electronics, it's electrical, it's software, it's mechanical. It's all of it. But it also is bill of materials represented, it's bill of process. So I know what the manufacturing process looks like before I build anything. Now that I have this digital twin, and that's the reason we make so much investment in terms of simulation capability, I can iterate on this thing over and over again. I have optimizing capability. I can run while my engineers are asleep, and I can get to the great results that I need to get to. And so that's what we look at, extending the digital thread to connect the enterprise, and a comprehensive digital twin so we can simulate scenarios. And that is one of the foundational core items to how we're driving sustainability so effectively. So we all have a leadership challenge. I don't know about you, I have a pretty sizable organization, and I know anything happens at any point in my organization, the buck stops with me. I am responsible. It doesn't matter where it was done. It doesn't matter how it was done. I am expected to know everything. And I'm guessing if I asked you to raise your hands, you all feel the same way I do. So this is a case where having digital thread connectivity and visibility to data can be a friend. If we all leverage our staff, we have 320,000 employees at Siemens. It would be awfully silly to only focus on ideation of 20% of them. We need to get ideation out of every one of them. As leaders, we all need to do that. So what can we do from a system perspective to ensure that can happen? So because of the down payments we made at Amberg almost 20 years ago, this isn't a cartoon. So Jensen was at an event with Roland a few weeks back in Munich. I was there. He outlined the future, and he talked about NVIDIA building their facility with Foxconn in Monterrey, Mexico. All of it was modeled in the industrial metaverse. This is, and you saw that upfront dashboard, we could select a number of Siemens facilities, click and fly right through the industrial metaverse, highly photorealistic, full physics-based. And by the way, we know the logic of how these machines and conveyance systems work. That's the actual logic that you're seeing represented. This isn't a typical Monte Carlo simulation or other type of simulation. This is an actual representation based on collected data of how this facility operates. Think of the power that that brings us. And here you're going to see at the end of a line, we have a robot cell set up. Someone literally can go in and grab the articulating arm of the robot, and you're going to see married right next to it in the industrial metaverse, that same motion getting impacted. Here's the power for us. Because we have this model built, we 3D scan the facility, everything is point cloud based, we then bring the actual model of the machine. I told you, if you're going to provide a machine to Siemens, you're going to give us the 3D data with it. That's all modeled accurately. We know where every column is. We got it down to an exact science. So we know exactly how this facility's layout. We see this. Now that we're collecting the IoT data, we can load it in the industrial metaverse. If we had an issue on the line, we can go full diagnosis mode with that and figure out exactly what happened, what were the contributing factors. By the way, if we think we're going to have supply disruption, we can model out the future and say, what are my opportunities to remediate that issue in the future? That is power at leadership fingertips. So on that dashboard, if I have a facility running out of whack, I'm going to see that right on the dashboard up front. I can obviously get notifications sent to me. The investment we made 20 years ago continues to pay off. And this has not only this went from Anton's vision of not laying off 1,200 workers to Siemens Accelerator started off in our software division as a brand to represent our portfolio. Siemens Accelerator has now taken over all of Siemens. That, John sitting here from Smart Infrastructure, every division is aligned to the strategy of Siemens Accelerator. That's what we're doing. And that's how we will continue to invest in the future of this company. So the worker challenge. We all have a responsibility to our people. I live and breathe it every day, just like all of you. Technology can be a pretty amazing equalizer. World Economic, again, talked about AI. I agree with Lisa's comments. We can't be afraid of AI. I just watched Terminator last week, by the way. I'm a little afraid of AI. But technology is the greatest equalizer we've ever seen. Small to medium enterprises can do things extremely efficiently embracing that capability. With what you can do with ML and AI, it's tremendous. You have access to decades of knowledge and information that you don't have to hire. How are we going to leverage that with our workers? Software adaptability to the workers needs to improve. There's some exciting things happening now about that user interface and how it can adapt to the worker. But today, because of that digital thread we laid out in our factories, there's some opportunities we can take advantage of right now. And so I want to show you a quick video of work we're doing with Microsoft. We're also doing similar work with AWS and integrating Bedrock capabilities in an application development. We acquired a company with North American headquarters across the street here, Mendix, low-code application development. We need to make things consumable to the user in a way they're comfortable with. LNS's own data tells us by 2031, 64% of the future workforce is going to be digitally native. Andy talked about it yesterday with hourly and salaried employees. I always get asked about IT-OT integration. I want to talk about blue-collar, white-collar convergence, because the future factory is a tech envelope. It's going to be a tech-advanced job, and our workers need to be prepared for that. So to give you an idea, this is a marketing-created video, but there's nothing on here that is not doable right now. You're going to see a worker in Kuala Lumpur take their phone, communicate into that device an issue that they're seeing on the shop floor. They can capture an image of it. They can capture a video of it. AI is going to translate whatever native language they were speaking at, study the data that was collected on that machine, come up with a Pareto on what are the likely contributors to the failure mode, go ahead and send that to the engineer in Frankfurt, Germany that was responsible in the system. It's all connected through digital thread and PLM. Now that engineer can get a set of recommended actions. They can actually contribute to that, help remediate the issue, figure out the failure mode in the code, go ahead and update the code. AI can assist with that as well. Send that package improvement to the facility, which could then get validated before implementation on the line. That's the power of what we can do if we marry technology with the innovation of our people and give them the tools that they need to do the job effectively. Just a simple example of what the capabilities that are coming out are to share with all of you. So I'm super pumped with the conversations I got to be a part of. It was a privilege to be here. The theme is, in my opinion, spot on, and I thank all of you for your time.
Please welcome to the stage Vice President, Strategic Capabilities and Performance Management at Bristol Myers Squibb, Lynn Kubinski.
Good morning. Who else is impressed with what Del just shared, right? The future is now, and he offered that he would give some tours, and I, for one, am definitely signing up. So we'll get that list going in the back. So it's a real pleasure to be here. And before I begin, I want to thank Mehul and the whole LNS team. This concept that we need to collaborate together is going to, in fact, be our competitive advantage within our own companies. I, for one, believe in the we before me, and I am grateful that there's other life science companies here. The if-then statement, or the us versus them, and someone talked about the human nature element yesterday, is true. And for me, I have a motto, which is being in life sciences, it's actually the patient versus the disease. So I hope you join me in that belief that we really need to learn from each other. So a little bit about me on the personal side. I live in New Jersey. I'm married for 25 years. I have 3 children, one still at home, 16-year-old boy, and I've got 2 daughters that are already in college. So I've got a senior at Savannah College of Art and Design, and I've got a sophomore at University of Southern California. I share that because in speaking with many of you, you're also of the age where you've got kids that are leaving the house, and just recognize we talk about transformations at work. That's like a transformation at home, right? As we navigate these waters together. I had no idea that Bristol Myers Squibb was known as a Pathfinder. In fact, I found out the same time that you did. So when I put this slide together about ideas to lead through change, recognize that that I also subscribe to how we got here might not get us there. So I'll share some ideas with all of you, and I really hope during the break that I get a chance to continue to learn from all of you. On the professional side, what I do for a living is transformations. I'm a bit of a change junkie, and I fully believe that you don't do digital for digital's sake. You certainly don't do change for change's sake. Within Bristol Myers Squibb, I've been here about 20 years, and I've had just a privilege of working in different areas. And I'll give you a quick glimpse, which is I was brought into the company. I was a network engineer in New York. I had my second daughter, moved to the suburbs, retired to be a stay-at-home mom. And I get a phone call from BMS asking when I can come in for an interview. I didn't apply. Did my husband apply for a job for me? And it wasn't the case. It was a gentleman I worked with that said, hey, there's a lady, she's moving out into your area. I don't think she's going to last being a stay-at-home mom, and if she does, I'm going to feel really bad for her kids. She's a little intense. So I didn't want to go to the interview. I went because someone put my name forth, and all during it, I kept saying I don't want a job, and they're like, no, but we cure cancer, and they were. It was at a time where BMS was outsourcing, and they didn't know how to do it. Right? They didn't know how to let another company into their network and preserve information and share and preserve and figure that out. And I said, I don't know how to do that either, right? But they were nice, and my dad had passed from cancer, so I joined in, and we figured it out. We figured it out pretty quickly, pretty sustainably. All the systems are actually in place now, 20 years later. And then somebody came to me and said, you know what? We're doing all of these outsourcing, but to do the contracting, it's really taking forever. The lawyers are always holding us up, and things aren't working fast. So I said, okay, let me go look over there. So we had 18 policies, and they were written by lawyers, and as far as I could tell, the only people that had ever read them were the auditors. So there were audit findings everywhere. So we made one policy, we put everybody on a system, we brought in EchoSign for people to sign digitally, and we told the lawyers, do not mark up anything until your business colleague is on the phone, and you gotta use some leverage. All right, so take that and fast forward it. So I did a number of transformations within IT and finance, and then the commercial team said, oh, I like that, can you bring it in? And so now I've got my groove, right? And the message that I want to share with you is I've been privileged with all of these areas because there's trust from leadership in what I'm doing. And I'm going to share with you some of how I do it, and I'm going to ask all of you to just think through how you build trust, right? How do you build it? And equally important, how do you maintain it? So I'm going to share with you Cassandra. Any Greek mythology fans in the room? Ooh, do you know the story of Cassandra? Do you want to share? Okay. So the story is Cassandra, she's beautiful. She is a princess, or her parents are the king and queen. This is in ancient Troy. And Apollo says, you're kind of groovy, I like you. And he tries to woo her. And Cassandra says, that's cool. And he gives her the gift, and the gift is of prophecy, so she can see into the future. Cassandra says, thank you very much. By the way, Apollo, you're not in that future. And he's a little bit angry, right? And he's jilted. Because he already gave her the gift, he can't take it back. So he adds to the gift a curse. And that curse is, you know what's going to happen, but nobody will believe you. Now, that's pretty brutal. And so 2 things to reflect on. 1, have you ever been Cassandra? Have you seen what's going to happen in your company so clearly? You have played this game before, right? It's not my first rodeo, but nobody's listening, right? So that's 1. And then the second is, have you ever run a program or a project where someone is squeaking and somebody else says, you got to change the people or change the people? And maybe that was Cassandra. Again, on that project team, they knew, but you were busy, you were focused, and you weren't listening. So what can bridge that is actually trust. And I know you're all very technical, so there's an equation I found, which is trust is going to be the sum of 3 things as the numerator, and the denominator is self-orientation. So I'll walk us through it quickly, right? So credibility, these are your words, right? This is how believable do you seem. The second piece is reliability. These are your actions, right? So with credibility, it's what I say I'm going to do. Reliability is, did I do it? Do I do it consistently? And intimacy is about our emotions. Now, does anyone believe that emotions are not in the workplace? Good answer. They are as real as oxygen in Teams meetings. And the ones out, throw a few emotions out. Fear. Anger. Okay. What about some positive ones? Pride, right? Nothing can beat that feeling when you've done something and you were gritty and it was hard and then you're out the other side, right? So take all of those 3 and then you divide it by self-orientation, which is what's your motivation, right? Do you care about me? Do you care about my team? Do you care about the company? Or are you just in this for you? Right? And I think you put all this together, and I'm going to share with you some of my learnings. And again, on the break, I really look forward to hearing some of your learnings. So I really like this quote. I hope it speaks to you as well, which is, to be trusted is a greater compliment than to be loved. And at work, I say, get your hugs at home. So we are, in BMS, for sure, a relationship-based company. And I benefit from that relationship because of those relationships. I've had the roles I've had, and I am on a quest to make us a performance-based culture, right? And so if you have, again, ever been frustrated of not running a program because another leader was put in place and not you, right? I'm going to share with you, I've had that, and I've learned from those leaders, and I'm going to share with you how I've learned to build trust. And again, number 1 is, it's hard to hear and it's harder to believe, but it's never personal, right? So when a leader comes in, it's because the senior leadership, the C-suite, trusts that they'll get it done, but you might not trust them, right? So the way that I build trust, because that's my DNA, I'm always going into areas where I really don't know anything, right? And that is, 1, I absolutely have to understand from senior leadership, what is it they want, right? What is the business imperative? And for the roundtables I've been in with Tom, Comstock, he keeps drilling into that. What is the vision? What is the mission? What is the business imperative? For sure, it's not rolling out a system. It's not making a process change, right? And in Bristol Myers Squibb, we had one which we announced 2 years ago, which is more medicines to more patients faster, right? So that's where we're going. And then how you get there, I don't know how you're going to get there, but we're going to figure it out together. So with that is, I make sure that I have crystal clear expectations and alignment from senior leadership. What do they want? When do they want it? And then how, I've got to, then trust is a 2-way street. How can I trust that they'll have my back? Because it might mean an operating model change. It might mean that the solution you have as your mental model may not work. The order that we might do something might shift. So it's hard to imagine all of us, wherever we are in our careers, to think that you've got the power equation to go into that C-suite and make demands. And I'm telling you you need alignment. You need to put yourself there, and you need to be vulnerable. If this goes wrong, what happens to me? If that's where your head is because of fear, you got to put it on the table. And put it all out there in a way that people see it. The other piece of building and maintaining trust is you've got to be explicit. Nobody knows what's going on in your head. And oftentimes, have you ever shared something of like, oh, I think this went really wrong, and somebody else said, no, you did great? We're our own worst critics, right? So make sure that you're explicit in your communications. Another big hack of mine is anytime I go into a new space, what I do is I don't have that credibility, so I rent it, right? I ask for the A team around me. And I have people nominate who are the A team. And I do everything I can to learn from them as quickly as I can, right? So this is a basic tenet of change management, right? Bring the team along with you. You, as the leader, need to make sure that you're asking good questions. You can't be wasting their time. So you do your research, you get the external data, you find out the benchmarks, you bring it to them, and then you ask very open questions. Why did you do it that way? How did you do it that way? And then you start to element like a little swagger. If you were king for the day, what would you do? If you were queen for the week, what would you do? And how do you make it bolder? What happens if you didn't have to do that? Right? What is the number one thing you would you would take out of the process? And keep building it up. And what the team will start to experience is that psychological safety. And for me, I also explicitly state I'm creating a psychologically safe space. And typically the way that I think works best is to do it in person, to do it on their ground, right? And there's a mix between team meetings and group facilitated sessions and one-on-ones. And I say that because in a team session, oftentimes one colleague will influence another, right, with the spirit of a high tide raises all boats, and it's not always coming from you. And you need the one-on-ones for people to tell you, based on their personality type or the threats that they perceive in the room, really how they're feeling. And again, please lean in, ask the questions. Every moment is waste, and you don't need to speak. I know I'm speaking a lot, but the most important thing for you to do is not talk. Just be silent, listen, and engaged. Please, no phones. All phones are silenced. My family can never find me, and guess what? There's never been an emergency. So keep that working. A few other things that I've learned, and maybe you have as well, is when they ask you a question, anyone asks you a question, you give them the honest answer, right? And so people always say, like, what am I doing here? And I tell them, here's what I'm doing. And keep it consistent, right? Be choiceful in your language. Work quickly. Almost every transformation I've ever done, I've been in and out in 2 years. Right? So my message is, I'm going to help build up this team. I'm going to help get us world class, and then you're going to take it over. Right? And that goes to my last point, which is reciprocity. If they are going to help you with the transformation, before they ask for it, you got to offer them something. And I always do this, and I ask people very openly, is like, how can I help you? And there's some colleagues that think that's foolish, right? They're going to ask for promotions, and they're going to ask for more money. And they might, but most of the time that's actually not the case. What they ask for is, can you help me understand what it'll take for me to get to the next level, right? Can you offer me some experiences that I can grow, whether internally or externally, right? And the third one is, can you put me in connections with people that are the decision makers? And I typically can do 1, 2, and 3, right? So in that spirit is reciprocity is huge. So you show up well, you show up together, and so just I want to be really careful with time here, but lead by example. If you are for your daily jobs, this doesn't just work for transformations. Do not ever be that leader that manages up. I think Adam Grant calls them swimmers because the people below are getting kicked, right? Is you want to be the leader that understands very clearly what needs to be done, and you can helicopter at all levels to translate it so people feel part of it. You need to own it, and a hack that I do is sometimes I actually leave my day job, right? So I'll either find a leader to handle the areas that might not be the priority, or I just tell them, like, take care of yourself. And I just did that in the spring. Right? And I do this all the time is, if it is not your #1 priority, it will not be their #1 priority. Communicate transparently. You need to do it how many times to have a behavioral change? 7. Right? So you can't say, I wrote an email, I hosted a meeting, right? You need to do it many times over the course of whatever you're trying to do. And can you imagine somebody hosts a big workshop and then they don't hear from you again? No, it doesn't work, right? You need to keep people updated, informed, and that's why it takes a lot of effort, and that's why you need your A team, and that's why you need to be focused. That team, they're experts, and I love the message about innovation anywhere from Dell. That is the truth, and that's the type of workforce that we want. So really inspiring people that they probably know best, but they've never been given the license to share what their ideas are. You need to have our workforce of tomorrow be the ones that are out in front, then they own the outcomes. Move quickly. Whatever it takes, do not get stuck. Move quickly and move in such a pace that they have to get on board, right? Because you're going to go without them, and then you certainly don't want that, and they certainly don't want that other. And then, of course, recognize and celebrate. I've had the benefit of having leaders that every time that I had an idea, they always cited my work, and I thought, oh, that's new. And now I do the same. So every idea, and I just said it was, what was Dell's and what was Tom's. Make sure you give credit for the work, because one, people need to hear that, and 2, others need to know that that's your default. So I'm not going to spend time here other than to scare you. So to do any change effectively, and I don't like the word change management because I think we're dull to it, but I'd rather flip it to say, how are you going to manage the change? And this is ProSci, this is just a standard, this isn't even our one that we use at BMS. There's a lot of methodologies out there. They all require intentional design, development, and delivery. So this is just a little bit of oh wow, there's a lot going on. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is, I was a little bit provocative LNS when you had leadership, in your world you have leadership, strategy, culture. And I'm saying that you need leadership to define the culture you want, and only once you get that culture will you actually execute on your strategy. And strategy here is, a vision and strategy aren't enough, right? Long-term, sustainable, reliable, all the illities of our success is actually execution every day. So with that, I thank you for your time. I hope you make a renewed commitment to trust. As leaders, it's our responsibility to put it forth. And I hope to see you the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We could not have asked for better speakers, a good dose of inspiration for us. And Dell doesn't know yet, but we all are going to sign up for that plant tour. So thank you so much. If you can get the next slide, just a couple of quick reminders. So we only have one set of roundtables. We'll start at 10 o'clock, so we have around 15 minutes. Please give us some feedback. We saw some of the folks give feedback, so I think if you can give us feedbacks about the roundtable, about this session, it'll be really great. We'll come back here in this room at lunches at noon, and we'll have our final roundtable, final keynote panel at 1 on the topic of servant leadership. Thanks, everyone.
Join us here again today at 4 p.m. for our executive keynote panel. Enjoy your roundtable sessions.